Commander Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant and watched the stars through the main screen. His ship looked nothing like the sleek alien vessels that filled the space around Nexus Prime Station. The Defiant was big and blocky, with thick armor plates covering its hull. Weapon pods stuck out from its sides like metal thorns. To anyone looking at it, the ship seemed old and crude. But Jake knew better. He had helped design this ship. Every ugly plate and awkward weapon mount had a purpose. The aliens would learn that soon enough. The communication screen lit up with an incoming message. Commander Harrison, please report to Docking Bay 7. The diplomatic meeting is about to begin. Jake straightened his uniform and headed for the shuttle bay. Ambassador Lisa Morgan was already waiting for him, along with Admiral Carl Peterson. Lisa looked nervous as she checked her notes one more time. This meeting would decide humanity's future in the galaxy. Remember, Admiral Peterson said quietly, let them talk. Let them show us what they really think of us. We need to know what we're dealing with. The shuttle ride to Nexus Prime was short but tense. The station was huge, built by a dozen different alien races working together. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its many ports. But none of them looked like the Defiant. Human engineering was different. Human thinking was different. The meeting room was large and cold. Representatives from 20 different species sat around a curved table. At the head of the table sat the Zephyrian delegation. Their leader, Supreme Admiral Vexithari, was tall and thin with blue skin and 4 arms. His species had ruled a large part of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Ambassador Morgan took her seat and smiled politely. Thank you all for meeting with us today. Humanity is honored to request membership in the Galactic Coalition. Admiral Vexithari looked at her with what might have been amusement. Yes, the humans. We have heard about your interesting attempt at building a warship. A hologram of the Defiant appeared above the table. Several alien representatives made sounds that Jake guessed were laughter. The ship looked even more awkward in the hologram, spinning slowly so everyone could see all its ugly angles. This is your pride and joy? Asked another Zephyrian officer. It looks like something a child built from scrap metal. More laughter filled the room. Jake felt his jaw tighten, but Admiral Peterson placed a hand on his arm. Wait, the Admiral's eyes said. Let them talk. Your weapons are particularly amusing, Vexithari continued. Kinetic projectiles. How wonderfully primitive. Our energy shields have not been threatened by such crude weapons in centuries. The alien pointed to the weapon pods on the hologram. And these mounting points, so exposed, so vulnerable. One plasma blast would remove them entirely. Ambassador, Morgan kept her smile, though Jake could see it was getting harder. Perhaps our approach is different from yours, but we believe it has merit. Different? Vexithari stood up, his 4 arms spreading wide. My dear human, there is no different in space warfare. There is advanced and there is primitive. Your ship represents the latter. A reptilian alien from the Corvash Confederation leaned forward. The hull design alone shows your lack of understanding. Why make it so thick and heavy? Speed and maneuverability. Win battles, not bulk. Because humans do not understand energy dynamics, said a crystalline being whose species Jake did not recognize. They still think like creatures fighting with rocks and sticks. The insults continued for another 10 minutes. Every aspect of the Defiant was mocked. Its engines were too loud. Its armor was too heavy. Its weapons were too simple. Its design was too crude. The aliens seemed to be having a contest to see who could make the most cutting remarks about human technology. Through it all, Admiral Peterson sat quietly, taking notes. Jake wanted to defend their ship, to explain why they had built it the way they had, but he followed the Admiral's lead and stayed silent. Finally, Vexithari called for order. Enough entertainment for now. Let us discuss the real matter at hand. He turned to Ambassador Morgan with a look of false kindness. Humanity, your species is young, and clearly lacks the knowledge needed to survive in civilized space. Therefore, the Zephyrian Empire offers you protection. Protection? Lisa asked carefully. Yes, you will become a client state of our empire. We will defend your world from threats you cannot possibly handle. In return, you will provide us with resources and follow our guidance in all matters of importance." The room went quiet. Jake felt his heart beating faster. This was not membership in the coalition. This was surrender. Ambassador Morgan's smile finally disappeared. "I appreciate the offer, Admiral, but humanity prefers to remain independent." Vexathari's expression changed instantly. The false kindness vanished, replaced by cold anger. "You refuse our generous protection?" "We respectfully decline," Lisa said firmly. The alien admiral stood up again, this time looking much more threatening. "Then you refuse the only chance for your species to survive. Very well. Perhaps when your pathetic warship is debris floating in space, you will reconsider." He gestured to his delegation, and they all rose to leave. But before walking out, Vexathari turned back one more time. "Commander Harrison," he said, somehow knowing Jake's name without being introduced. "I look forward to meeting your Defiant in battle. It will be amusing to watch it die." The Zephyrians left the room, followed by most of the other alien delegations. Within minutes, only the humans remained at the large table. Admiral Peterson finally spoke. "Well, that went about as expected." "They really think we're primitive," Lisa said, shaking her head. Jake looked at the hologram of his ship, still spinning slowly above the table. "Maybe that's exactly what we want them to think." The Admiral smiled grimly. "Get back to the Defiant, Commander. I have a feeling you're going to be very busy very soon." As they left the meeting room, Jake thought about all the things the aliens had not seen in their examination of his ship. They had looked at the surface and seen crude weapons and ugly armor. They had not seen the quantum processors hidden inside the hull. They had not seen the adaptive AI systems that could learn and change during battle. They had not seen the real innovations that made the Defiant special. The aliens thought humans were primitive because they fought differently. Soon, they would learn that different could be very dangerous indeed. 3 weeks had passed since the meeting at Nexus Prime. Captain Amy Rodriguez sat in her command chair aboard the Defiant, reading the mission orders that had just arrived from Earth Command. The message was simple and direct, but something about it felt wrong. "Lieutenant Tucker," she called to her intelligence officer, "come take a look at this." Ben Tucker moved from his station to stand beside the captain's chair. He was young for an intelligence officer, but he had good instincts. Amy trusted those instincts. "Routine patrol of the Kepler 442 system," Ben read aloud. "Standard reconnaissance mission. Report any unusual activity." He frowned. "That's a long way from Earth for a routine patrol." "My thoughts exactly," Amy said. "Why send our only prototype warship to the outer rim for a simple patrol? We have regular scouts for that kind of work." Ben pulled up a star chart on his tablet. The Kepler 442 system was indeed far from Earth, near the edge of explored space. It was also uncomfortably close to Zephyrian territory. "Captain, I need to check something," Ben said. "Give me an hour to dig through our intelligence files." Amy nodded and Ben hurried back to his station. She had learned to trust her crew's expertise. If Ben thought something was suspicious, it probably was. Down in the engine room, Chief Tony Walsh was having problems of his own. The Defiant systems were more complex than anything humans had ever built before. They combined Earth technology with alien components that had been carefully studied and reverse-engineered. Making it all work together was like solving a puzzle. That kept changing. "The quantum processors are running hot again," his assistant engineer reported. "Should I shut them down?" "No," Tony said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We need them online. The whole ship depends on those processors. Just increase the cooling flow and keep monitoring the temperature." The quantum processors were one of the Defiant's most important secrets. They allowed the ship's systems to adapt and learn during combat. No other species had figured out how to make quantum computers work reliably on a starship. Most aliens thought it was impossible, but humans had always been good at making impossible things work. Tony moved to another console where Dr. Helen Carter was running tests on their most secret weapon, the quantum disruption field generator, looked like a simple metal box, but it could interfere with any energy-based system within several thousand kilometers. "How are the field tests going?" Tony asked. Helen looked up from her work. "Good and bad. The good news is that it works exactly as designed. The bad news is that it uses enormous amounts of power. We can only run it for a few minutes before the ship's main reactor starts to overload." "A few minutes might be enough," Tony said thoughtfully, "especially if we use it at the right moment." "That's what I'm hoping. But Tony, this thing has never been tested in real combat. We're working from theory and computer simulations. What if something goes wrong?" Tony shrugged. "Then we fix it. That's what humans do. We make things work, even when they shouldn't." Back on the bridge, Ben Tucker had finished his research. What he found made his stomach feel cold. "Captain," he said quietly, "we need to talk privately." Amy followed him to her ready room, a small office just off the main bridge. Ben closed the door and activated a privacy screen that would prevent anyone from overhearing their conversation. "It's a trap," Ben said without any introduction. "Someone leaked our patrol route to the Zephyrians." Amy sat down heavily in her chair. "How do you know?" "I checked the communication logs from the past 3 weeks. Our patrol orders were sent through 6 different relay stations before reaching us. That's unusual. Normal orders go through 2 relays at most." Ben pulled up several data files on his tablet. "I also found encrypted transmissions being sent from 3 of those relay stations to known Zephyrian communication hubs. The timing matches perfectly with when our orders were processed. So they know exactly where we're going and when we'll be there," Amy said. "Yes, and there's more. Long-range sensors have detected a large Zephyrian fleet moving toward the Kepler 442 system. 12 ships, including several heavy cruisers." Amy stared at the tactical display Ben showed her. 12 enemy ships against 1 human vessel. The odds were not good, even with the Defiant's advanced systems. "We could request new orders," Ben suggested. "Ask for a different patrol route." Amy shook her head. "No. If we change course now, they'll know we detected the trap. They'll just set up another ambush somewhere else. So what do we do?" Amy was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Finally she smiled, but it was not a pleasant smile. "We spring the trap, but not the way they expect." She activated the ship's communication system. "All senior officers to the briefing room. We have a mission to plan." 20 minutes later, the Defiance department heads gathered around the briefing table. Amy had told them about the trap and the enemy fleet waiting for them. 12 ships, said Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker, the weapons officer. "That's a lot of firepower." "It is," Amy agreed. "But they're expecting to fight 1 scared human ship trying to run away. Instead, they're going to get something very different." She brought up a tactical display showing the Kepler 442 system. "The Zephyrians will position their fleet here near the 4th planet. It's the most logical place to intercept us when we drop out of hyperspace." "Logical for them," said Navigator Lieutenant Kate Adams. "But what if we don't drop out where they expect?" "Exactly," Amy said. "Kate, I want you to plot a course that brings us out of hyperspace right in the middle of their formation. Close enough to touch." The navigator's eyes went wide. "Captain, the risk of collision, I know the risks. But if we appear where they least expect us, we can cause chaos in their ranks before they can organize a proper attack." Dr. Carter leaned forward. "That would be the perfect time to use the quantum disruption field. If we're close enough, we could disable several of their ships at once." "My thoughts exactly," Amy said. "Steve, what's our weapon status?" "All kinetic cannons are loaded and ready," Parker reported. "Targeting systems are calibrated for close-range combat. If we can get in among them before they react, we can do serious damage." Tony Walsh raised his hand. "Captain, I should warn you. The ship's systems are still being modified. Some of our upgrades are untested in combat conditions." "Will they work?" Amy asked. "They should work, but there's always a chance." "There's always a chance with any new technology," Amy interrupted. "The difference is that human technology is designed to be fixed when it breaks. Alien technology just stops working." She looked around the table at her officers. "The Zephyrians think they're hunting a primitive human ship. They expect us to run, or to fight desperately from a distance. Instead, we're going to get close and hit them hard. It's risky, Ben Tucker said. Everything worth doing is risky, Amy replied. But I'd rather take our chances in a fight than let them destroy us without a battle. The meeting continued for another hour as they planned their attack. Every officer contributed ideas and suggestions. By the time they finished, they had a plan that was both simple and audacious. As the officers left to prepare their departments, Amy remained in the briefing room with her thoughts. In a few hours, they would jump to hyperspace and head for what everyone knew was an ambush. The smart thing would be to call for help or change course. But Amy had not joined the Space Service to do the smart thing. She had joined to explore the unknown and defend humanity. Sometimes that meant taking risks that others would call foolish. Zephyrians were about to learn that humans were full of surprises. The Zephyrian fleet hung in space like a pack of hunting wolves. 12 sleek warships formed a perfect crescent around the point where intelligence reports said the human ship would appear. Fleet Admiral Kethmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sovereign's Glory, watching the empty space where his prey would soon arrive. All ships report ready, Admiral, his communications officer announced. Plasma weapons are charged and targeting computers are locked on the emergence point. Kethmore nodded with satisfaction. This would be quick and easy. One primitive human ship against 12 of the Empire's finest warships. The battle would be over in minutes, perhaps seconds. Remember, he broadcast to his fleet, we want wreckage to examine. Try not to vaporize the entire ship immediately. Several of his captains acknowledged with what sounded like amusement. They all thought this was going to be entertaining rather than challenging, but something went wrong with their perfect ambush. Instead of appearing at the predicted location, the human ship materialized directly in the center of their formation. The Defiant dropped out of hyperspace less than a kilometer from the Zephyrian flagship, so close that Kethmore could see the details of its ugly hull through his main viewer. How did they... he began. But events moved too fast for questions. On the Defiance bridge, Captain Amy Rodriguez felt a moment of satisfaction as she saw the shocked expressions on alien faces through her screen. Her navigator, Lieutenant Kate Adams, had pulled off an impossible maneuver, bringing them out of hyperspace precisely where they needed to be. All weapons, fire at will, Amy ordered. Dr. Carter, activate the disruption field. The space around them exploded into chaos. The Defiant's kinetic cannons began firing tungsten rods at incredible speed. The projectiles were simple chunks of metal, but they hit with the force of small asteroids. The first target was a Zephyrian cruiser called the Stellar Wrath, positioned just 200 meters away. The tungsten rods punched through the alien ship's energy shields like they were not even there. The Zephyrians had never encountered weapons that could ignore their defensive systems. Their shields were designed to stop energy beams and plasma bolts, not solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker watched his targeting display with grim satisfaction. As the Stellar Wrath's hull began to rupture, atmosphere vented from multiple holes as the kinetic rounds tore through the ship's interior. Within seconds, the cruiser was listing badly and falling out of formation. Target destroyed, Parker reported. Moving to next target. But the Zephyrians were not helpless. Even shocked by the human ship's unexpected appearance, they began to return fire. Plasma beams lanced out from multiple ships, converging on the Defiant from all directions. The alien weapons should have melted the human ship instantly. Zephyrian plasma cannons were among the most powerful energy weapons in the galaxy. But something strange happened when the beams hit the Defiant's hull. Instead of burning through the armor, the plasma energy seemed to spread across the ship's surface and disappear. The quantum-enhanced armor that the aliens had mocked as primitive was actually absorbing their weapon fire and redirecting the energy harmlessly into space. Chief Tony Walsh monitored the energy absorption systems from his engineering station. Armor is holding perfectly, he reported to the bridge. The quantum matrix is distributing the plasma energy across the entire hull. As long as they don't concentrate fire on one spot, we can take everything they throw at us. Dr. Helen Carter activated the quantum disruption field, and immediately 3 Zephyrian ships began having problems. Their weapon systems started misfiring. Their engines began stuttering and their shield generators flickered on and off randomly. "What is happening to our ships?" Admiral Kethmore demanded, but none of his officers could give him an answer. They had never seen anything like this before. The disruption field was interfering with the quantum processors that controlled most alien technology. Unlike human systems, which were designed to work even when damaged, Zephyrian technology depended on everything functioning perfectly. When the quantum field disrupted their delicate systems, the ships became nearly helpless. Lieutenant Kate Adams spun the Defiant through the enemy formation like a dancer, using the ship's superior maneuverability to avoid concentrated fire. The human vessel was smaller and more agile than the Zephyrian cruisers, able to change direction quickly while maintaining accurate fire. "Two more targets locked," Parker announced. Firing kinetic spread. A second Zephyrian ship, the Knight's Edge, took multiple hits along its engine section. The tungsten rods shattered the ship's reactor containment, causing a series of internal explosions that tore the vessel apart from the inside. The Defiant's adaptive AI systems were learning from each exchange of fire. Every time the Zephyrians tried a new attack pattern, the human ship's computers analyzed it and developed a counter-response. Within minutes, the AI was predicting enemy moves before they happened. "Their plasma cannons have a 2-second charging cycle," the AI reported to Parker. "Recommend evasive pattern Delta 7 to avoid incoming fire." Kate Adams adjusted the ship's course based on the AI's predictions, sliding past 3 plasma beams by centimeters. The Zephyrians were firing at where the human ship had been, not where it was going to be. Admiral Kethmore watched in growing horror as a third ship, the Void Striker, suffered critical damage to its weapon systems. The human ship seemed to anticipate every move his fleet made. Worse, their weapons were doing terrible damage while his own plasma cannon seemed nearly useless against the primitive-looking armor. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel," he ordered. "Ignore everything else and destroy that ship." But concentrating their fire meant moving into closer formation, which played directly into human hands. The tighter the Zephyrian ships grouped together, the more effective the Defiant's area weapons became. Dr. Carter overloaded the quantum disruption field, creating a massive pulse that disabled 4 ships simultaneously. The energy surge burned out several of the Defiant's own systems, but the damage to the enemy was devastating. "Field generator is offline," Carter reported, "but we got them good." 2 more Zephyrian cruisers, the Star Piercer and the Cosmic Blade, collided when their navigation systems failed at the same time. The impact destroyed both ships in a spectacular explosion that lit up the entire battlefield. Parker targeted the disabled ships with precision strikes, his kinetic rounds finding weak points in their armor and cutting through vital systems. The Zephyrian vessels had been designed to fight energy-based weapons, not solid projectiles that could punch through any defense. In less than 10 minutes, the battle was over. 4 Zephyrian ships were completely destroyed, 3 more were crippled and drifting helplessly, and the remaining 5 were retreating as fast as their engines could carry them. The Defiant had suffered only minor damage. A few armor plates were scorched by plasma fire, and some secondary systems needed repair, but the ship was still fully combat capable. Admiral Kethmore stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His mighty fleet had been defeated by a single human ship that looked like it had been built in a scrapyard. Everything he thought he knew about warfare had just been proven wrong. "Signal retreat," he ordered quietly. All ships returned to base immediately. As the surviving Zephyrian vessels limped away, Captain Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. The first test of human military technology had been a complete success. The aliens had learned that primitive and effective were not the same thing. "Set course for home," she ordered, "and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the Defiant is ready for anything they want to throw at us." The news of the Defiant's victory spread through Zephyrian space like wildfire. On the capital world of Zephyria Prime, Emperor Zalthek sat on his crystal throne, listening to Admiral Kethmore's report with growing fury. "You are telling me that 1 human ship destroyed 4 of our cruisers?" The Emperor's voice was dangerously quiet. "4 of our finest warships defeated by primitives?" Kethmore knelt before the throne, his forearms spread in submission. Your Majesty, their technology is not what we expected. Their weapons ignore our shields completely, and their ship seems to adapt to our tactics in real time. Excuses, Zalthek hissed. You had 12 ships against one enemy vessel. There is no excuse for such failure. The Emperor stood up from his throne, his tall frame casting a shadow over the kneeling admiral. Summon Admiral Vexathari. It is time to deploy the apocalypse. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Carl Peterson stood in the war room at Fleet Command, reading reports from across human space. The victory at Kepler 442 had bought them time, but not much. Intelligence sources reported massive Zephyrian fleet movements throughout their territory. They're pulling ships from every sector, General Martha Collins said, as she joined Peterson at the holographic display. Whatever they're planning, it's big. Peterson nodded grimly. The Defiant proved our technology works, but one ship can't fight an entire empire. How many more prototypes can we have ready in the next 6 months? 3, maybe 4 if we push the construction crews to their limits. But Admiral, even 5 ships like the Defiant won't be enough if they bring their full fleet against us. The Admiral studied the star charts showing Zephyrian territory. Then we don't fight their full fleet. We make them spread out, chase shadows, waste resources on the wrong targets. In deep space, the Defiant was already putting this strategy into action. Captain Amy Rodriguez had volunteered for the most dangerous mission possible, taking the fight directly into enemy territory. Her ship moved through Zephyrian space like a ghost, striking supply convoys and isolated outposts before disappearing again. Commander Jake Harrison led a boarding party onto a captured Zephyrian transport ship. The alien crew had surrendered quickly when they realized their weapons could not penetrate human combat armor. What kind of supplies are they carrying? Amy asked over the communication link. Jake examined the cargo manifests on his tablet. Quantum processors, shield generators, and what looks like advanced targeting systems. This stuff is heading for their main fleet base. Not anymore, Amy said with satisfaction. Dr. Carter, what can you learn from those processors? Helen Carter was already examining one of the alien devices. These are more advanced than what we captured before. If I can reverse engineer them, we might be able to improve our own systems significantly. The Defiant's raids were having effects beyond just the military damage. Word was spreading throughout Zephyrian space that the mighty empire could not protect its own shipping lanes. Client species that had been forced into submission began to wonder if the time for rebellion had come. On the mining world of Karak 7, the local governor received another report of human attacks. The third convoy this week, he muttered to his aide. How is one ship doing this much damage? Perhaps the humans have more ships than we thought, the aide suggested. Or perhaps our intelligence was completely wrong about their capabilities. The governor looked out his window at the alien workers in the mines below. They had been quiet lately, but he could sense their growing restlessness. Double the guard patrols, and send a message to Fleet Command. We need more protection. Similar messages were flooding in from across the Empire. Every sector commander was demanding additional ships for defense. Resources that should have been concentrated for the attack on Earth were instead being scattered across hundreds of worlds. Agent Ryan Murphy moved carefully through the shadows on the Zephyrian space station. The human intelligence operative had spent months establishing his cover identity as a traitor from the Outer Rim. Now that cover was paying off as he gathered crucial information about enemy fleet movements. The datapad he carried contained details of the Empire's most secret project. The dreadnought Apocalypse was nearing completion in the hidden shipyards of the Vortex Nebula. When finished, it would be the largest warship ever built, capable of destroying entire planets. Ryan transmitted the data in a burst transmission to a relay satellite, then destroyed his equipment. His mission was complete, but getting off the station alive would be another challenge entirely. Back on the Defiant, the crew was feeling the strain of constant combat. They had been behind enemy lines for 2 months, fighting almost every day. But their efforts were working. Intelligence reports showed that Zephyrian fleet strength was being diverted from the planned Earth invasion to defend their own territory. We're making them react instead of act, Amy told her senior officers. During their daily briefing, every ship they send to hunt us is one less ship they can use against Earth. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker looked tired but determined. The kinetic cannons are holding up well, but we're running low on tungsten rounds. We'll need to find a supply source soon. There's a Zephyrian ammunition depot in the Rigel system, Ben Tucker reported. Lightly defended, mostly automated. We could raid it for raw materials. Amy nodded. Plot a course. But first, Dr. Carter, what's the status on those captured quantum processors? Helen looked up from her workstation. I figured out how they work. The Zephyrians use a completely different approach to quantum computing than we do. Their systems are more powerful, but also more fragile. If we can combine their processing power with our adaptive design, we get the best of both technologies, Amy finished. How long do you need? Give me 3 days and I can have a prototype ready for testing. The modifications Dr. Carter developed would prove crucial in the battles to come. By combining human adaptability with alien processing power, the Defiant systems became even more effective at countering enemy tactics, but the Zephyrians were adapting too. Deep in the Vortex Nebula, work on the Apocalypse proceeded around the clock. Emperor Zalthek had ordered the project's completion accelerated, regardless of cost. Admiral Vexithari supervised the final installations personally. How long until the main weapon is operational? He asked the chief engineer. 2 weeks, Admiral. The planet killer cannon requires precise calibration of 17 separate focusing crystals. You have 1 week, Vexithari said coldly. The Emperor grows impatient, and I will not be the one to tell him we need more time. The engineer bowed nervously. Yes, Admiral. We will work faster. As the Apocalypse neared completion, other parts of the Empire were falling apart. 3 client species had declared independence in the past month. Zephyrian troops were being withdrawn from frontier worlds to protect the core systems. Trade, routes that had operated safely for centuries, were now dangerous due to human raids and alien rebellions. On Earth, Admiral Peterson watched the intelligence reports with growing hope. They're overextending themselves, he told General Collins, trying to be strong everywhere but ending up weak everywhere instead. It's working, Martha agreed. But our sources say they're building something big in the Vortex Nebula. If they complete that project, then we make sure they don't complete it, Peterson said firmly. Contact Captain Rodriguez. It's time for the Defiant to pay a visit to that nebula. The message reached the Defiant as it finished its raid on the ammunition depot. Amy read the new orders with a mixture of excitement and concern. The Vortex Nebula was heavily defended and intelligence about the target was limited, but the mission could end the war before the Zephyrians could bring their full power to bear against Earth. It was worth the risk. All hands prepare for hyperspace jump, Amy announced over the ship's communication system. We're going deep into enemy territory for our biggest mission yet. The Defiant turned toward the Vortex Nebula, carrying humanity's hopes into the heart of the Zephyrian Empire. The Vortex Nebula was a swirling mass of purple and gold gas clouds that stretched across 3 star systems. Hidden deep within its center was the most secret shipyard in the Zephyrian Empire. And at that shipyard, the dreadnought Apocalypse waited like a sleeping giant. Captain Amy Rodriguez studied the massive ship through the Defiant's sensors. The Apocalypse was 10 times larger than her vessel, bristling with enough weapons to destroy entire fleets. Its armor was thicker than most ship hulls, and its shields could probably stop anything the galaxy could throw at it. That thing is enormous, Lieutenant Kate Adams whispered from her navigation station. Size isn't everything, Amy replied, though she felt a chill looking at the alien dreadnought. Remember, they probably thought the same thing about our ship. Emperor Zalthek himself commanded the Apocalypse from its massive bridge. He had come personally to oversee the destruction of the troublesome human vessel. No primitive ship would escape him twice. All weapons charged and ready, Your Majesty, Admiral Vexithari reported. The planet killer cannon is prepared for immediate firing. Zalthek stared at the small human ship on his main screen. It looked even more pathetic next to his mighty dreadnought. Good. I will personally watch this vermin die. The battle began when the Apocalypse opened fire with its main weapons. Energy beams that could melt asteroids lanced out toward the Defiant. Amy felt her ship shake as the first wave of fire struck their shields. Armor holding, Chief Tony Walsh reported from engineering. But barely. Those weapons are incredibly powerful. Dr. Carter, can we use the disruption field against something that big? Amy asked. Helen Carter shook her head. The Apocalypse is too large and too well shielded. Our field generator would burn out before it could affect their main systems. More weapons fire erupted from the Dreadnought. The Defiant twisted and rolled, using its superior speed to avoid the worst of the bombardment. But there was nowhere to run in the confined space of the nebula, and the enemy ship's weapons seemed to fill every possible escape route. Hull breach on Deck 7, Damage Control reported. Emergency containment fields holding. Amy knew they could not win a direct fight against such overwhelming firepower. The Defiant was tough, but it was not invincible. She needed a different approach, something the Zephyrians would not expect. Tony, what would happen if we synchronized our quantum processors with their reactor core? She asked suddenly. The chief engineer looked confused. Captain, that's incredibly dangerous. If the frequencies match wrong, both ships could explode. But if they match right? Tony thought for a moment. If we could create a resonance cascade in their power systems, yes, it might work. But the timing would have to be perfect. Dr. Carter overheard the conversation from her station. I can modify the disruption field generator to create a quantum resonance beam. But I'll need to scan their reactor signature. First, do it, Amy ordered. Kate, get us closer to that monster. The navigator's eyes went wide. Closer. Captain, they're already shooting at us with everything they have. Then we'll have to be faster than everything they have. The Defiant accelerated directly toward the Apocalypse, dodging between energy beams and plasma bolts. The alien gunners could not believe what they were seeing. No sane captain would fly directly at a dreadnought. But Amy Rodriguez was counting on human unpredictability. While the Zephyrians tried to understand her tactics, she was getting close enough for Dr. Carter to scan their reactor. Got it, Helen announced. Their power core uses a quantum singularity contained by magnetic fields. If I can destabilize the containment... How long do you need? Amy asked as another energy beam nearly clipped their port wing. 2 minutes for the modifications, then another minute to charge the resonance beam. You have it. Amy switched to the ship-wide communication system. All hands prepare for emergency maneuvers. We're about to try something that's never been attempted before. On the Apocalypse, Emperor Zalthek was growing frustrated. The human ship should have been destroyed by now. Instead, it continued to dance around his weapons fire like a small bird avoiding a giant predator. Why is it not dead yet? He demanded. The ship is faster than our targeting computers predicted, Vexithari admitted, and their pilot seems to anticipate our firing patterns. Then stop trying to be precise. Fill the entire area with weapons fire. Destroy everything. The Apocalypse unleashed its full arsenal. Hundreds of energy beams, plasma bolts, and missile. Warheads filled the space around the Defiant. There was no way any ship could survive such concentrated firepower, but the Defiant's adaptive AI systems had been learning throughout the battle. Every weapon the Zephyrians fired was analyzed and cataloged. The computer could now predict where every shot would go before the aliens even pulled the trigger. Evasive pattern Omega, the AI announced to Kate Adams. Probability of survival, 73%. Kate followed the computer's guidance, steering the ship through gaps in the weapons fire that seemed impossibly small. Energy beams passed centimeters from the hull as the Defiant wove through the deadly maze. Resonance beam ready, Dr. Carter announced. Amy took a deep breath. Fire. The modified disruption field generator sent an invisible pulse of quantum energy toward the Apocalypse. The beam was too weak to damage the Dreadnought's armor or shields, but it was not aimed at them. Instead, it penetrated deep into the ship's core, where the quantum singularity that powered the massive vessel was contained. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Apocalypse began to shudder. What is happening? Emperor Zalthek shouted as his ship shook around him. The reactor containment field is destabilizing, his chief engineer reported in panic. The quantum singularity is beginning to collapse. The collapse of a quantum singularity was not an explosion in the normal sense. Instead, it was a cascade failure that spread through every system connected to the reactor. The apocalypse's weapons went offline first, then its shields, then its engines. Within minutes, the most powerful warship in the galaxy was a dead hulk drifting in space. But Amy was not finished. Even as the apocalypse died, new contacts appeared on the Defiant's sensors. The Earth fleet had arrived, led by Admiral Carl Peterson himself. "Sorry we're late," Peterson's voice came over the communication system. "We brought some friends." Behind the Earthships came vessels flying the flags of a dozen different species: the Corvash Confederation, the Crystal Beings of Zarian, and many others who had suffered under Zephyrian rule. The destruction of the apocalypse had been broadcast throughout the galaxy, and the Empire's enemies had finally found the courage to act. Emperor Zalthek watched from his crippled flagship as rebellion erupted across his territory. World after world declared independence. Fleet after fleet defected to join the growing alliance against Zephyrian rule. In the space of a single day, a 1,000-year empire crumbled into dust. "Your Majesty," Admiral Vexathari said quietly, "we should surrender while we still can." Zalthek stared at the small human ship that had started it all. The Defiant looked as crude and ugly as ever, but he now understood that appearances could be deceiving. "Signal our surrender," he said finally. "The war is over." 6 months later, Commander Jake Harrison, now promoted to Admiral, stood on the observation deck of Nexus Prime Station. Where once there had been only alien ships, now human vessels moved freely among vessels from dozens of species. The galaxy had learned that being different was not the same as being primitive. Humanity's approach to technology and warfare had seemed crude to species that relied on energy and elegance. But crude could be effective, and effective was what mattered in the end. The Defiant hung in space near the station, no longer alone. Around it floated the growing human fleet, each ship incorporating lessons learned from that first desperate battle. But the original prototype remained special, a reminder that sometimes the best solution was the one nobody expected. "Admiral," Harrison smiled as he watched a group of young alien engineers studying the human ships. They were trying to understand how primitive technology had defeated the most advanced empire in the galaxy. The answer was simple, though it would take them years to learn it. Humans did not just build machines. They built machines that could think, adapt, and overcome any challenge, and that made all the difference. The stars looked different from the observation deck of the Earth vessel Horizon. Commander Jack Miller stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the unfamiliar patterns of light. The ship had traveled farther than any human vessel. Before it, they were making history with every passing moment. "Commander, we're picking up unusual energy readings," said Lieutenant Kate Boyd from her station. Her voice was calm, but Miller could hear the tension underneath. "Source?" Miller asked, walking over to her console. "Unknown, sir. Nothing like we've seen before. Definitely not natural." Miller nodded. "Alert status yellow. I want all sensors at maximum." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained for first contact scenarios, but no one truly believed it would happen on their mission. The Horizon was primarily a scientific vessel, sent to catalog potentially habitable worlds beyond the solar system. "Sir, visual contact," called out Navigation Officer Peter Clark, putting it on the main screen. The image that appeared made the entire bridge fall silent. Two vessels unlike anything humans had ever built were engaged in what could only be described as combat. One ship gleamed with smooth curved surfaces that reflected the distant starlight. The other was darker, angular, with what looked like exposed weapon systems covering its hull. "Are we seeing this correctly?" Miller asked softly. "Confirmed, sir," said Communications Officer Lisa West. "Two vessels of unknown origin. The larger one appears to be pursuing the smaller. We're detecting weapons fire." Miller didn't hesitate. "Full stop. Maintain distance. Let's not get involved in someone else's fight." The order had barely left his mouth when the smaller vessel changed course, heading directly toward them. "They've spotted us," Boyd said. The smaller ship is on an intercept course. Shields up, Miller ordered. Weapons on standby, but do not engage unless I give the order. The approaching vessel slowed as it neared the horizon. Now they could see the damage it had sustained. Parts of its hull were breached and what looked like escape pods had been jettisoned. We're receiving a transmission, West announced, surprise evident in her voice. I think it's a distress signal. The computer is attempting to translate. Put it through, Miller said. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything they had heard before, musical and strained with clicks and tones human vocal cords couldn't produce. But the universal language of desperation needed no translation. The ship's AI worked quickly. Words began to appear on the screen as the translation program found patterns in the alien language. Help. Diplomatic vessel. Under attack. Civilians aboard. Miller looked back at the view screen. The larger ship was closing in fast. Sir, the pursuing vessel has locked weapons on both the smaller ship and us, Boyd reported. Miller had a decision to make. The Horizon wasn't built for combat. Their orders were clear. Observe, document, and avoid interference with any potential alien civilizations they might encounter. But there were people on that ship, beings, whatever they called themselves, asking for help. How long until our reinforcements could arrive? Miller asked. The nearest Earth vessel is 3 weeks away at maximum speed, West replied. Miller nodded. No help was coming. Target the pursuing vessel's weapon systems only, he ordered. Fire. When ready. The bridge fell silent again, but this time with tension. Sir, that's a direct violation of our non-interference protocols, said Executive Officer Ryan Jones. Noted, Miller replied. But I'm not going to float here and watch a massacre. Fire. The Horizon's defense systems were limited but precise. The shots hit the pursuing vessel's main weapon ports. The alien ship turned its attention fully to the Horizon now, seemingly surprised by the interference. Evasive maneuvers, Miller ordered. Pattern Delta, and open a channel to the diplomatic vessel. The Horizon moved with surprising agility for its size, avoiding the worst of the enemy fire. The ship shuddered as some hits connected. Channel open, West confirmed. This is Commander Jack Miller of the Earth vessel Horizon. We're going to try to help you. Can your ship still move? After a moment, a reply came through the translator. Yes, limited power. Thank you. Follow our lead. We're going to create a distraction. When I give the signal, make for these coordinates. Miller had the computer send the location of a nearby asteroid field where they might lose their pursuer. The plan was risky. The Horizon wasn't built for combat maneuvers, but Miller had insisted that all his crew train for worst-case scenarios. Now that training would be tested. All power to forward shields, Miller ordered. We're going to pass directly between them. The crew looked nervous but determined as they carried out his orders. The Horizon accelerated, heading straight toward the fight. Sir, the enemy vessel is firing, Boyd shouted. Hold course, Miller said calmly. The Horizon shuddered violently as it took multiple hits. Warning lights flashed across control panels. Now, Miller ordered as they passed between the two alien ships. Fire all aft weapons. The Horizon's rear weapons fired at the pursuing vessel as they passed, causing it to veer off course. The diplomatic ship took advantage of the moment, changing direction toward the coordinates Miller had sent. Follow them in, Miller ordered, and pray they know their way through that asteroid field better than we do. The next 20 minutes were the most intense of their mission. The Horizon weaved through the asteroid field, taking hits both from the pursuing vessel and from space debris they couldn't avoid. The diplomatic vessel moved with greater ease, clearly more familiar with such maneuvers. We've lost them, Boyd finally announced, relief evident in her voice. The enemy vessel has broken off pursuit. Miller allowed himself to breathe. Damage report? Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4, contained by emergency force fields. Minor injuries reported, no casualties. We've lost 30% of our shield capacity and 2 of our 6 engines are offline, Jones reported. Could have been worse, Miller said. Where's the diplomatic vessel? Holding position just ahead, sir. They're hailing us. On the view screen appeared a being unlike anything they had seen before. Tall and slender, with iridescent skin that seemed to shift colors as it moved. Its eyes were large, with multiple pupils that adjusted independently. "We are the Talarian Diplomatic Corps," the translator conveyed. "I am Ambassador Zivnara. You have saved our lives and potentially prevented an interstellar incident. We are deeply grateful." Miller nodded respectfully. "We're glad we could help those who attacked you." "Varaxians," the ambassador supplied. "A species previously unknown to the Galactic Confederation until recently. They have been attacking our outposts without provocation or communication for the past 6 cycles." "Galactic Confederation?" Miller asked, exchanging glances with his officers. "Yes," Zivnara replied. "A union of 27 spacefaring species. And you are humans, correct? We have observed your world from afar but had not planned first contact for another decade, when your technology had further matured." Miller couldn't help but smile. "Sometimes plans change. It seems we have a lot to talk about, Ambassador." "Indeed," Zivnara agreed. "Perhaps starting with repairs to your vessel, our engineers can assist. And then, there is much we must discuss about the Varaxians. The Confederation is at war, Commander Miller, and your species has just joined it by your actions today." Miller looked around at his crew, at the damaged ship that had been meant for peaceful exploration, and at the strange new ally on the screen. In a single day, everything had changed for humanity. "Well," he said simply, "I guess we'd better make the most of it." 6 months had passed since humanity's unexpected entry into galactic affairs. The large meeting room aboard the Confederation command ship, Eternal Vigilance, buzzed with tension. At one end of the long table sat Admiral Patricia Donovan, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform was crisp, but dark circles under her eyes showed the strain of recent weeks. Across from her, High Commander Kelthax of the Confederation fleet towered over the other aliens. His scaled skin shimmered with a blue-green light when he moved. 4 arms were crossed over his broad chest in what humans had learned was a sign of disapproval. "Your plan lacks proper formation and respect for established doctrine," Kelthax said. His translator rendered his clicks and rumbles into flat English. "The 9th Fleet must maintain position at the Praxis Junction. It is the proper defensive stance." Donovan pushed a hand through her hair. "With all due respect, High Commander, fighting this war according to 10,000-year-old tactical manuals is exactly why you're losing." The room fell silent. The other alien commanders shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke to Kelthax this way. "Admiral Donovan," said a smaller alien with feathery appendages that quivered with agitation, "perhaps you do not understand. The Praxis Junction is strategically vital. All our models indicate—" "Your models are exactly what the Varaxians expect," Donovan interrupted. She stood up and walked to the large star map. "They've studied your tactics for months. They know you'll defend Praxis because that's what your ancient battle plans tell you to do. But look here." She pointed to a seemingly empty sector. "If we position our faster ships here instead, we can catch their supply lines completely unprotected." Kelthax's skin darkened. "You suggest we abandon a critical defensive position to attack cargo ships?" "I suggest we stop fighting the war they expect us to fight," Donovan said. "The Varaxians don't care about your rules of engagement. They care about winning." The argument continued for hours. In the end, Donovan left frustrated. The Confederation commanders agreed to consider her suggestions, which she knew meant they would politely ignore them. In another part of the massive Confederation vessel, Alan Martinez was causing an equal amount of disruption. The engineering bay was filled with equipment from a dozen different worlds. Martinez stood by a large holographic display, sleeves rolled up, pointing at a modified ship design. "The problem isn't your engine efficiency," he explained to the gathered Confederation engineers. "It's your entire approach to ship design. You're building perfect battleships when what you need are swarms of smaller craft." Chief Engineer Vrel Nar, an insectoid being with compound eyes that reflected the light in rainbow patterns, clicked his mandibles in disagreement. "Our capital ships are the finest in the galaxy. Each is a perfect balance of offensive and defensive capabilities. And they're being picked apart by Varaxian hunter groups, Martinez countered. Look, what if we converted some of your passenger transports? They have the space. We could fit each one with 20 to 30 small fighter craft. Fighter craft? Vrelnar asked, the translator struggling with the concept. Small, 1 or 2 person vessels, fast, maneuverable, and armed just enough to do damage to specific targets. Martinez quickly sketched a design on his tablet. We've used similar tactics in our own conflicts. You propose to send individuals into battle in such tiny vessels? Another engineer asked, clearly horrified. The casualty rates would be lower than what you're experiencing now, Martinez interrupted. These fighters could protect your capital ships from the small Varaxian attack craft that have been causing so much damage. The engineers exchanged glances. The idea was so foreign to their way of thinking that they struggled to even evaluate it. It would take months to design and build such vessels, Vrelnar finally said. Martinez smiled. Not if we modify existing shuttles. I could have a prototype ready in 2 weeks. The Confederation engineers reluctantly agreed to allow Martinez and his human team to proceed with what they called the Martinez conversion. They didn't expect much to come of it. 3 weeks later, Donovan stood on the bridge of the Confederation, vessel Swift Justice, watching as the first squadron of modified fighters prepared for their maiden combat mission. The Varaxians had been spotted approaching a mining colony in the Deneb system. The fighters are in position, Admiral, reported Commander Liam Foster. Pilots report ready status. Donovan nodded. Tell them to stick to the plan. Hit and run, only. Target their sensor arrays first, then weapons. The battle that followed stunned the Confederation observers. The small human-designed fighters darted between the larger Varaxian vessels, too quick to target effectively. They struck with precision, disabling key systems before retreating, only to swoop back in from another angle. This is unconventional, said Captain Zivnara, who had been rescued by the Horizon months earlier and now served as liaison between human and Confederation forces. This is how humans fight when we're outnumbered, Donovan explained. We find the weak spots and we exploit them. Your people have been trying to meet the Varaxians head-on, strength against strength. That only works when you're stronger. By the end of the engagement, 3 Varaxian vessels had been disabled without a single fighter lost. The mining colony was safe. Word of the victory spread quickly through Confederation channels. 2 days later, Donovan was summoned to meet with the Confederation High Council. She expected resistance. Instead, she found them eager to learn more about human battle tactics. We have reviewed the combat footage, said Council Elder Mirasal, her translucent skin pulsing with soft light. Your methods are disturbing but effective. We wish to implement more of these fighter squadrons immediately. Donovan smiled. I'm glad to hear that. And I have other suggestions as well. Martinez in engineering has been working on modifying your sensor arrays to better track Varaxian movement patterns. Yes, we have heard of the human engineer's unusual ideas, Mirasal said. Initially, many found his approach chaotic and disrespectful of our traditions, but results cannot be ignored. After the meeting, Donovan met Martinez in the ship's common area. They sat at a table drinking the closest thing the Confederation had to coffee, a bitter blue liquid that left a slight tingle on the tongue. They've approved full production of the fighters, Donovan said, and they want to hear more of our unusual ideas. Martinez grinned. About time. I've got 20 more modifications that could double their fleet's effectiveness. Don't push. Too hard, too fast, Donovan cautioned. These people have been doing things their way for thousands of years. Change is difficult. They need to change faster, Pat, Martinez said, his expression growing serious. The Varaxians are adapting to our tactics already. We need to stay ahead of them. Donovan nodded. We will, one step at a time. She looked out the viewport at the stars. It's strange, isn't it? We always wondered if we were alone in the universe, and now humanity is helping decide the outcome of a galactic war. What's strange, Martinez replied, is that with all their advanced technology and thousands of years of history, they needed us to show them how to think differently. He raised his cup. To human ingenuity. Donovan clinked her cup against his. To turning the tide. Dr. Laura Kennedy didn't look like someone who could change the course of a war. Her small frame was usually hunched over a screen or a sample, her curly brown hair often tied back messily as she worked. But for the past 3 months, she had been obsessed with understanding the Varaxians. The laboratory aboard the Confederation science vessel, Truth Seeker, was large and filled with equipment Kennedy was still learning to use. She sat surrounded by data screens showing Varaxian attack patterns from dozens of battles. "You've been at this for 18 hours straight," said Navy Lieutenant Richard Garcia as he entered with 2 steaming cups. "Even brilliant scientists need sleep." Kennedy smiled tiredly and accepted the drink. "Sleep can wait. I'm seeing something here, Rick. Something no one else has noticed." Garcia pulled up a chair. Unlike Kennedy, he looked every bit the military man. Tall, fit, with sharp eyes that missed little. His role as military liaison to the science team had unexpectedly turned into a partnership with Kennedy. "Show me," he said simply. Kennedy pulled up footage from 3 separate battles. "Watch the Varaxian formations. See how they move? It's not just tactical, there's something primal about it." Garcia studied the screen. The Varaxian ships moved in patterns that seemed oddly familiar, though he couldn't place why. "It reminds me of something," he said, "but I can't put my finger on it." "Wolves," Kennedy said. "Or lions. Or any pack predator from Earth. They're not just fighting us, Rick, they're hunting us." Garcia's expression changed as he saw it too. The way the Varaxian ships would cut off escape routes, how they would isolate a target from the main group, the patience they showed before striking. "They're treating our ships like prey," he said slowly. Kennedy nodded eagerly. "Exactly. The Confederation has been fighting them like they're an enemy army, but they're behaving like hunters, and that means they have predator instincts we can exploit," Garcia finished. For the next week, Kennedy and Garcia worked together, analyzing every piece of footage and data on Varaxian behavior. They brought in other human scientists and military strategists, forming a small team focused on this new approach. When they finally presented their findings to the Confederation Science Council, the reception was cold. "You claim to understand an alien species better than we do, after only months of contact?" asked Chief Scientist Kelvorian, his long fingers tapping impatiently on the table. "We have studied the Varaxians since they first appeared. They are warriors, not animals." Kennedy stood her ground. "With respect, that assumption may be why you haven't found an effective way to counter them. We're not saying they're just animals. We're saying they have biological imperatives that influence their tactical decisions. What Dr. Kennedy has identified," Garcia added, "is that Varaxians follow specific hunting patterns that can be predicted and manipulated." The council members exchanged glances. Most seemed skeptical, but Ambassador Zivnara, who had joined the meeting out of interest, leaned forward. "What do you propose?" Zivnara asked. Kennedy brought up a new display. "A trap, but not a military one as you might design it. A trap that appeals to their hunting instincts." Her plan was bold. Instead of positioning fleets for maximum defensive coverage, she proposed creating an apparent vulnerability, a gap that would be irresistible to the Varaxian hunting pattern. "You want us to deliberately weaken our defenses?" one council member asked, clearly alarmed. "We want you to appear weak in one specific area," Garcia clarified, "while being very strong in ways the Varaxians won't expect until it's too late." After hours of debate, the council remained unconvinced. It was only after another devastating Confederation defeat at the Proxima Nebula that High Commander Kelthax finally agreed to try Kennedy's approach. The Dinara system was chosen for the test. It contained valuable mining operations but few civilian populations. The Confederation fleet positioned itself with an obvious gap in its defenses, leaving a clear path to the system's inner planets. Behind this gap, hidden in the sensor shadow of a large gas giant, waited a fleet of Martinez's converted fighters and several new vessels equipped with weapons designed specifically to target Varaxian sensor systems. Kennedy and Garcia watched from the command center of the lead vessel as the operation unfolded. Admiral Donovan stood nearby, her face tense. "Varaxian fleet detected," announced the sensor officer. "They're approaching the gap in our defenses just as predicted." Kennedy's heart raced. If she was wrong, if the Varaxians didn't take the bait, a vital system would be left exposed. "They're increasing speed," the officer continued. "All ships moving toward the gap." Garcia touched Kennedy's shoulder lightly. "They're hunting, just like you said." When the Varaxian fleet committed fully to the attack, moving through the gap with their guard down, Donovan gave the order. "All ships, execute Operation Mousehole." The hidden human-designed fighters launched, while automated defense platforms that had been powered down to avoid detection suddenly activated. The Varaxian fleet found itself caught in a devastating crossfire. For the first time, a Varaxian assault force was completely destroyed without a single Confederation casualty. The outer celebration afterward was subdued but genuine. Kennedy found herself the center of attention as Confederation scientists who had dismissed her now wanted to understand her methods. But she was already moving on to her next discovery. In her lab, she studied samples collected from destroyed Varaxian vessels. "What are you looking for now?" Garcia asked as he joined her. Kennedy pointed to a microscope display. "During the battle, I noticed something. When the first Varaxian ships were hit, the others reacted almost instantly, faster than any communication signals we detected." "What are you saying?" "I think they communicate in ways we haven't recognized. Look at these samples. These are chemical compounds found in the wreckage, but they're not from weapons or ship systems." Garcia peered at the display. "What are they?" "Pheromones," Kennedy said. "Or something similar. I think the Varaxians communicate distress through chemical signals. And if that's true, we could potentially disrupt their communication," Garcia finished, seeing the implications immediately. Kennedy nodded, her eyes bright with excitement despite her exhaustion. "Or we could do something even better. We could send false signals. We might be able to make them retreat without firing a shot." She turned back to her work, already planning how to synthesize the Varaxian chemical signals. Garcia watched her, with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You should get some rest first," he suggested. Kennedy shook her head. "Not yet. This could change everything, Rick. If we can speak their language, their real language, maybe we can do more than just fight them. Maybe we can understand them." As Kennedy returned to her microscope, Garcia sent a message to Admiral Donovan about their new discovery. The war against the Varaxians was about to enter a new phase, one that might end the conflict in ways no one had imagined. News of Dr. Kennedy's discovery spread quickly through the Confederation fleet. The ability to synthesize Varaxian chemical signals was a breakthrough that could change the course of the war. But it also raised difficult questions. Colonel William Bennett stood before the Joint Human Confederation War Council, his posture rigid and confident. His presentation showed detailed plans for using the synthesized signals as weapons against the Varaxians. "We can deploy these compounds ahead of Varaxian fleets," Bennett explained. "Their ships will receive false distress signals that will disrupt their formations and confuse their attack patterns." The room was divided. Human military leaders nodded in agreement, while many Confederation representatives looked troubled. "This is chemical warfare," said Council Elder Tralvec, his voice translated into a deep, resonant tone. "The Confederation banned such methods 10,000 years ago, after the Scourge Wars nearly destroyed our ancestor species." Bennett's expression hardened. "With respect, Elder, we're not talking about destroying their bodies. We're talking about disrupting their ability to coordinate their attacks. It could end this war without another shot fired." "The Colonel has a point," Admiral Donovan said. "This is communication disruption, not a biological weapon. We use electronic warfare all the time to jam enemy communications." "It is not the same," insisted another council member. "You are manipulating their biological processes. There are lines that should not be crossed even in war." The debate grew heated. Humans saw a practical solution to end the fighting quickly. The Confederation saw a dangerous ethical line being approached. Olivia Clark, the human diplomatic representative, had been quiet during most of the meeting. As a former professor of interspecies ethics before the war, she had been specifically requested to attend this council. Now all eyes turned to her as she stood. "I understand both perspectives," she said calmly. "The human desire to end the conflict quickly, and the Confederation's concern about methods, but I think we're missing something important here." She walked to the central display and brought up footage of Varaxian attacks on civilian worlds. The Varaxians have shown no interest in negotiation. They've systematically destroyed any world that surrendered without a fight. 23 billion lives have been lost already. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes showed her emotion. Sometimes the most ethical choice is the one that ends the killing most quickly. Elder Tralvek sighed, a sound like distant wind. "Your points are valid, Representative Clark. But if we abandon our principles to win this war, what have we become?" Though meeting ended without resolution, the council would need more time to consider such a significant decision. Later that day, Dr. Ben Howard, a human ethicist who had been working with Confederation scientists, approached Kennedy in her lab. "I heard about the council meeting," Howard said. "Bennett wants to weaponize your discovery immediately." Kennedy looked up from her work, rubbing her tired eyes. "I know. I'm not sure how I feel about it. This research was supposed to help us understand the Varaxians, not just find new ways to fight them." Howard nodded. "I've been working with some Confederation ethicists. We might have a compromise solution." Howard's idea was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of using the synthesized signals as weapons, they could be used as a containment strategy. By creating perimeters that broadcast signals that Varaxians would instinctively avoid, they could protect civilian worlds without directly harming the enemy. When Kennedy and Howard presented this alternative to the council, the reception was much warmer. "A shield rather than a sword," Elder Tralvek said approvingly. "This approach honors our principles while still protecting our people." Colonel Bennett was clearly disappointed but recognized that this was better than no use of the signals at all. "We can establish these perimeters around our core worlds immediately, but I still believe we're missing an opportunity to end this war quickly." The compromise was approved. Within weeks, the first chemical barriers were established around key Confederation systems. The effect was immediate and surprising. Varaxian forces began to retreat from protected systems, consolidating their forces in unclaimed space. "They're pulling back faster than we expected," Garcia told Kennedy as they reviewed the latest intelligence reports. "Almost like they recognize something has changed." Kennedy frowned at the data. "It's odd. The signals we're using should just make them uncomfortable, not trigger a full retreat. It's almost like..." "Like what?" Garcia prompted when she fell silent. "Like they're regrouping, adapting." Kennedy pulled up more data. "We need to be careful. We don't fully understand what these signals mean to them. We're using their language without knowing all the words." Her warning proved prescient. 3 days later, the Varaxians launched a massive attack on the border world of New Horizon. But this time, they seemed unaffected by the chemical barriers. "They've adapted somehow," Donovan said during the emergency meeting that followed. "They're either blocking the signals or they've changed how they respond to them." Kennedy had been working non-stop since the attack began. "It's more than that," she said. "The attacks are different now, more coordinated, more deliberate." Before anyone could respond, an urgent message came through from the border outpost nearest to Varaxian territory. "Admiral, we're picking up an unusual transmission," the communications officer reported. "It's coming from a Varaxian vessel, but it's using our communication protocols." The room fell silent. "Put it through," Donovan ordered. The screen flickered to life, showing a Varaxian for the first time in direct communication. The alien was tall, with grayish-purple skin covered in ridges. Its 4 eyes blinked independently, and its mouth was lined with small, sharp teeth. "We wish to speak," the Varaxian said in heavily accented but understandable Common, the trade language of the Confederation. "You have learned our true speech. Now we learn yours." Donovan looked at Kennedy, whose face showed shock and excitement. Think our chemical signals were an attempt to communicate, Kennedy whispered. Not an attack or a barrier. This is Admiral Patricia Donovan of the Human Confederation Alliance, Donovan said carefully. We are willing to speak with you. The Varaxian made a gesture with its clawed hand. I am called Hunter above all. I will meet with you. Only you. Only humans. Why only humans? Donovan asked. Humans fight differently. Humans think differently. The Varaxian's eyes fixed on Kennedy, somehow knowing she was responsible for the chemical signals. Humans understand the hunt. We will speak to humans. After the transmission ended, the council erupted in debate. This was unprecedented. The Varaxians had never attempted communication before. It could be a trap, Bennett warned. Or it could be our first real chance for peace, Clark countered. In the end, it was decided that a small team would meet with Hunter above all at a neutral location. Captain Samantha Rogers, known for her diplomatic skills, would lead the mission. Kennedy would go to continue studying Varaxian communication. Garcia insisted on joining them for security. As they prepared to depart, Kennedy felt both excitement and fear. They had sought to understand the enemy to defeat them better. Instead, they had accidentally opened a door to something no one expected: the possibility of communication, understanding, and perhaps even peace. The meeting location was a small abandoned mining station in neutral territory. Captain Samantha Rogers stood at the viewport, watching as the Varaxian shuttle approached. Her red hair was pulled back tightly, and though her face remained calm, her hands clasped behind her back betrayed her tension. They're docking now, Dr. Kennedy said, checking the station's sensors. Just one ship, as agreed. Lieutenant Garcia checked his weapon one last time before holstering it. I still don't like this. What if it's a trap? Then we'll deal with it, Rogers said simply. But something tells me it isn't. They've had plenty of chances to attack us directly. The airlock hissed open, and Hunter above all stepped into the station. In person, the Varaxian was even more imposing than on the view screen, nearly 7 feet tall with powerful limbs and those 4 unsettling eyes that moved independently. 2 smaller Varaxians flanked him, clearly guards. You are the human leaders? Hunter above all asked, his voice deep and rumbling even through the translator. Rogers stepped forward. I am Captain Samantha Rogers of Earth. This is Dr. Laura Kennedy, who discovered how to synthesize your communication signals, and Lieutenant Richard Garcia, our security officer. The Varaxian studied them intensely, his nostrils flaring as he seemed to take in their scent. You smell of fear, but you stand firm. Good hunters must control fear. We're not here to hunt, Rogers said carefully. We're here to talk. Hunter above all made a sound that might have been a laugh. All life hunts, Captain. For food, for safety, for knowledge. We have been watching how humans hunt in this war. You are different from the others. Kennedy couldn't contain her scientific curiosity. Why did you attack the Confederation in the first place? What do you want? The Varaxian's expression changed subtly. Want? We wanted to survive. The others would not understand. But perhaps humans will. What followed was a revelation that changed everything they thought they knew about the war. Hunter above all explained that the Varaxians weren't conquerors by choice. They were refugees, fleeing an even greater threat from beyond the galaxy. We call it the Devourer, he said, and even the translation couldn't hide the dread in his voice. It consumes all in its path. Planets, stars, life. Our homeworld was the first to fall. We have been running for generations. Why not just explain this to the Confederation? Rogers asked. Why attack them? We tried in our way, Hunter above all said. We sent warnings, showed evidence of the Devourer, but your Confederation saw only strange aliens with powerful weapons. They prepared for war, so we struck first. It is the way of survival. Your way of communication is very different from ours, Kennedy pointed out. The chemical signals you use naturally. We had to work hard to understand them. Hunter above all nodded. This is why we noticed when you began using our true speech. No species has done this before. It made us curious. Garcia, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. If what you're saying is true, this devourer is coming here next? How long do we have? 10 of your years, perhaps less, the Varaxian said grimly. We hope to take enough territory and resources to prepare defenses. We did not expect such resistance. The implications were staggering. The war they had been fighting was just the prelude to a much greater threat. Rogers exchanged glances with Kennedy and Garcia, seeing the same realization in their eyes. We need to bring this information to both our leaders, Rogers said finally. The Confederation and humanity need to hear this directly from you. Hunter, above all, hesitated, then nodded. I will speak to them, but only if humans translate our words. Your kind understands both worlds. When they returned to Confederation space with Hunter above all aboard their ship, the reaction was one of shock and disbelief. An emergency session of the full Confederation Council was called, with human representatives present. The evidence Hunter above all provided was compelling. Records of destroyed star systems, scientific data on the Devourer, and the history of the Varaxian exodus. Kennedy and her team verified as much as they could, and found no reason to doubt his claims. The diplomatic efforts that followed were unprecedented. Human negotiators lacking the historical baggage of the Confederation species served as intermediaries. Where Confederation diplomats saw only the atrocities of the recent war, humans recognized something familiar in the Varaxian plight, the extreme measures taken by a species fighting for survival. Daniel Wright, a veteran of Earth's last global conflict, led the team that drafted the Galactic Concordat. The agreement transformed the binary conflict into a three-way alliance against the greater threat of the Devourer. We turn enemies into allies, Wright explained during the signing ceremony. It's something humans have done throughout our history. Sometimes the greatest battles must be fought side by side. The transition wasn't smooth. After years of war, trust came slowly, but the humans continued to bridge the gap between the two alien groups, finding common ground and shared purpose. 6 months after the Concordat was signed, preparations for the coming battle against the Devourer were well underway. Varaxian hunting tactics were being combined with Confederation technology and human adaptability to create defenses unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. On the observation deck of the newly commissioned Joint Command ship, Unity, Ambassador Zivnara found Kennedy staring out at the stars. You seem troubled, Doctor, Zivnara said. Kennedy smiled faintly. Not troubled, just reflecting. A year ago, we were strangers to the galaxy. Now we're helping prepare for a threat most of us can barely comprehend. Your species has a unique gift, Zivnara observed. You understand both the Confederation's desire for order and peace, and the Varaxians' instinct for survival at any cost. You bridge worlds that might never have found common ground. We've had plenty of practice, Kennedy admitted. Human history is full of conflicts and alliances, betrayals and reconciliations. I guess we've learned a few things along the way. Across the deck, Hunter above all approached, now wearing the insignia of the Joint Defense Force. The Varaxian had become an important liaison between his people and the Alliance. The new sensor grid is operational, he reported. It will give us early warning when the Devourer approaches. Zivnara inclined his head in acknowledgement. Perhaps now we have a chance to face this threat together. Hunter above all looked at Kennedy. The humans know darkness but choose light. They understand fear but act with courage. When the Devourer comes, I wish to fight beside them. Kennedy was surprised by the sentiment from the normally stoic Varaxian. We'll all fight together, she said. That's the point of all this. Later, as the massive Allied fleet conducted joint exercises in the space near what had once been the front lines of their war, Admiral Donovan and Captain Rogers watched from the bridge of the Unity. Look at that, Donovan said, gesturing to the view screen where Confederation, Varaxian, and human vessels maneuvered in perfect coordination. A year ago, they were trying to destroy each other. Now they're preparing to save the galaxy together. Rogers nodded. It's what we do best. Isn't it? Adapt, overcome, bring people together when it matters most. Is that what we did? Donovan asked. Turned the tide of war into a tide of cooperation? I think so, Rogers said. We didn't just change the outcome of the war. We changed what everyone thought was possible. As the Unity moved forward to join the exercise, the combined fleet formed a new formation, one that incorporated human unpredictability, Confederation precision, and Varaxian hunting patterns into something greater than any could achieve alone. The stars watched silently as the former enemies prepared together for the greater challenge ahead. The tide had turned, not just in a war, but in the very future of the galaxy.